you to get comfortable in your seat. So just maybe rock back and forth and relax and settle in, close your eyes. And take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And on each inhale, imagine yourself floating in the ocean. And on the inhale, a wave comes along and your whole body floats upward. Then on the exhale, your body floats back down again. Inhale, floating up. Exhale, floating down. If thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them float on by. They enter as we rise on the wave, and they exit as we settle back down on the ocean. On your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema. Listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, you're listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Friends, this week we are entering our second week, focusing on the soul trait of humility. I'll just bring up our little calendar here. You can see that we're today, April 15th, we're on humility. Following 2 weeks, we'll be focusing on patience and anger. After that, loving kindness. And so we are just about, maybe a little under a third of the way through our journey of the Tikkun Middot Curriculum. Last week, we were talking about, feeling kind of whole and complete, not, feeling a sense of shame of who we are, but being confident. And then just, and we of course use this idea of space, how much space you occupied. And so I'm curious for the last week, whether you were here or whether you weren't, how did humility show up for you? And were there times you noticed that you were taking up too much space or too little space? Yeah, Wendy.
Everybody. Well, it kind of came in a strange way for me. I was lied to by a really important person in my life, not my spouse. But I was taken aback, and I realized that I have that same angry feeling when somebody lies to me as I do when somebody almost causes a car accident. So I said, this is strange. And I didn't do anything at that time. This was about Monday. No, it was Tuesday. And I said to myself, how does a person who embraces the challenge of living a life mindful of positive and balanced character development through Musar practice apply this philosophy when faced with, because I was going to do this with all my challenges. And I said, when faced with a lie told by a close and important relative.
Mm.
And I ended up going through all of the character development traits and chose certain ones to apply. And I was very happy with what I found. And all it does is come around to that hineni.
Mm.
Life is a preparation for the here I am, send me moments. And that was one of those, because I usually don't react by like a tiger. I usually have to think about it for a while, and then I usually come up with maybe something to say, or maybe I just ignore the situation, which in this case I don't think it's going to work. But what I came all the way around to is realizing that I can see this as a challenge to teach the person who lied, rather than seeing the person as a liar and somebody I don't ever want to be around anymore because it's not going to happen. And just like pouring out and just having that loving kindness and judging her favorably. It surprisingly was not as hard as I thought it was going to be, but it did take study and practice. So I'm glad that we're all here.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that's, a wonderful model of not reacting in the moment and really being kind of mindful and trying to be who you are, and how can I, be guided towards my best self to deal with the situation where someone acted in a way that wasn't okay. It wasn't okay with you, it really hurt you, upset you. And, you took a real mindful approach towards figuring out your right response. So thank you for sharing that with us. Paul.
I guess I have two examples. One is I'm out on the West Coast with my mom for this time, and I realize that there are times when I revert back to being her son, where she's always happy to hear my stories, whatever they might be. And for me, part of the making sure that I'm taking the appropriate space is watching myself go through that, and then sometimes stopping myself and realizing that when my mom has something to say, that there's more to it than what she just said, and asking her information, or tell me more about that. That sounds interesting. So I found out some good family history. It's been really fun. That's one way. And the other way to work is I've been leading a group that we meet bi-weekly for the last year or so. And I've known that I really do need some help with that. And there's a part of me that keeps thinking, no, I can do this. I should be able to do this. But I realize that I'm really serving my colleagues as well if I'm just trying to do this myself. So I reached out to somebody who I respect, and asked her if she would be interested in helping me out and working with me, keeping track of the calendar of events and keeping an eye out for interesting things to bring to the group. And she accepted, and it felt good because she's younger than I am. And so it's part of mentoring somebody to give them more that they can do in sort of being more visible in the company. And it just felt like the right thing to do. My ego part that was trying to do it all just felt really silly after she accepted. So.
Well, thank you for sharing those, Paul. Great, two wonderful examples of sort of looking at how much space you were occupying and deciding to make some tweaks and some adjustments to, make room for other people to share their gifts. So thank you. Anyone else care to share?
John can.
Okay, hey, Joanne.
Hi. So I guess I have two examples. Sometimes I feel like I don't take enough space up, and maybe sometimes I take up too much space. So I don't present myself, my opinion or my take on something clearly enough. So I had two issues. One was with the Sears refrigerator repair process and trying to file a claim to maybe get some kind of credit towards a new refrigerator, which I desperately need. And I wasn't realized that the repairman who came, whatever information he passed on wasn't the correct information. So I had to connect with a different person and get another repairman who came out today, actually. And I found out that what needs to be repaired, they're probably not going to cover either, but at least I know now because I didn't know before. So that was one thing. And so I felt successful in that. And the other thing is taking too much space or withholding information, which I hate when people do that. But I find myself doing it because this one person in the sisterhood of my synagogue, I'm the president, and we're going to have a meeting next week because we have to decide what kind of food thing we're going to do for Shavuos. You know, we want to distribute something to congregants and maybe get some things to people who are homebound. And I was getting a lot of emails back and forth, you know, asking me this question and that question. And because I asked somebody else who does food distribution for help, and he said, don't do it for free. And then other people were saying no. And there's, you know, back and forth, a million emails. And so I decided we're having a meeting. And then the person who I actually really didn't want to hear from again, but she said, please send an agenda. And I said, okay, you know, I'll send an agenda and try to put all the points that have happened so far, you know, like rehash what's happened so far. So when we meet next week, you know, so I realized, like, you know, because this person is very persistent and sometimes annoying, you know, that sometimes I'm too short with her as a response. But, you know, I realized that, like, she has a good point here. And so I made a better reply. And I also said, I just thought she just sent a reply. I said,
I think you're getting the picture. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no, so she gets very in your face, but it's like, okay. But I asked her the question, or I said, I was going to check out Blintzed prices tomorrow unless you already have. Or did you do that already? Question. And so I got a response just now that I saw and said, I'll be on Blintzed patrol tomorrow, Joanne. So it works better. Communication really has to be a two-way street.
Yeah.
And you can't cut people off like that, you know. You have to be open. So that's humility.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Hearing that you, thank you.
Yes.
One more, Carrie.
My interactions that I'd like to share are with a 15-month-old toddler. And what I am working on is how much space, how much do I get in his space? How much do I let him explore and find out and enjoy his toys and do stuff and make mistakes and get frustrated, and how much do I interfere to slow or mitigate the frustration level? And it's I don't have the answer, but it's been interesting to try different things, step back. The space is not such that I have to watch him every second, and he's not going to hurt himself. You know, he can go in around the house and discover things, and I can let him do that and disappear for a minute or two. And so it's interesting. You know, I want to be there all the time, but I want to encourage his independence and learning.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Carol.
Well, I think this is humility. Once again, I got my final jab today. Yay! I'm fully vaccinated. And once again, my friend insisted on accompanying me. No, I don't need her help. I didn't need her to be there. I felt perfectly comfortable going and everything else. But I realized it must really mean something for her, because she called me last night and she said she wasn't even feeling all that great. Her allergies were really bad. And I said, well, if you don't feel like going, you certainly don't have to. Oh, no, I'm going. Okay, I was not going to argue with that. And she's so kind and she's so sweet and caring. And I thought, Carol, just suck it up and accept it with grace, because this is very special to have a friend who wants to do this for me. So even though it's not something I need, you know, I would have been fine going by myself. But I said, yeah, just shut up and do it, you know, let her do what she wants to do.
Well, there's something, you know, about allowing someone else to be generous,
Yes.
you know, which is really special. And to not, you know, I'm hearing is you're not going to let your ego get in the way. Yeah, of course you could drive yourself and do this. But if someone really, really wants to be generous, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I did drive myself. We didn't feel like going in each other's cars.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha.
but she met me there, which was super sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I noticed in a couple, not in that example, but a number of examples today, people were talking about power differentials. You know, I'm the president of this, or I'm the senior person on the team, or I'm the, you know, the adult, and here's a toddler. And, you know, those are really important times to notice, you know, our humility, because we can use our age or positional authority in ways which could, you know, in Carrie's example, talking about this toddler, you know, you could stunt this person's growth, you know, or Paul's like, you know, I need some help and I can help someone else grow. And so there's, you know, Rabbi Ira Stone talks a lot about Musar as learning to bear the burden of the other, or Rabbi David Jaffe talks about as learning to be in relationship with the other. And humility, that's such an important thing, you know, where are these boundaries? And where can I let people in a little bit more? Let them be generous. Or where do I need to, you know, do some other things? So thank you all for sharing so much. There's, let us pull up another prompt for discussion here. I'm just going to keep track of the time. Okay, so I'm gonna, yeah, we'll talk about this. Let's talk about, because this is a phrase that comes up a lot, certainly in Musar literature and other places, where it says that Moses was very humble, more so than any person on the face of the earth. And it's interesting when this comes up. It's in the incident when Aaron and Miriam start criticizing Moses. They don't like his second wife, and you know, they're like, "Hey, God talks to us too." And Miriam ends up getting punished with a skin disease. But like right before this, you know, they're complaining to him, and then it says, you know, Moses was humble. So I want to think about like that piece for a second. You know, why do you think that this line was attached to that story? You know, why is it like Moses was criticized and then it says he was humble? Yeah, Joanne.
Can you put the slide back up? Can you put the slide back up, Greg?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
I think maybe because he didn't have a comeback to them or get angry. There was something, I think, in last week's parsha where two of Aaron's sons died because they brought a strange fire, and Moses is angry at it says is he yells at the two remaining sons, but he's really angry at Aaron. And then Aaron defends his position, you know, like, after what happened to me, am I supposed to eat this, whatever? And Moses agreed. He realized his brother was right.
Yeah.
So it shows his humility, that he was like all up in arms, and then he listened to reason.
Yeah, well, that's it's interesting, and your explanation kind of reminds me of the story that Wendy shared at the beginning. It's like somebody did something that hurt me, and I sort of stopped and thought about it for a while. How do I want to respond to this? So, you know, because in other situations, Moses does react. You know, the people complain, and Moses does this, and God complains to Moses, and Moses, you know, gets down on his knees and asks forgiveness, and, you know, all these things. But here, you know, it just says he's humble. So yeah, I like that interpretation.
Moses also shows up. You know, he's there. God calls on him and he says, well, not me. I'm not one to speak and all this, but God says, yeah, I want you anyway. And Moses says, Hineni, here I am.
Yeah, I'm here, you know, and we're gonna talk about the Hineni piece of this. So that's, you know, I'm glad that you brought that in, because there's a certain level it's just kind of showing up, you know. It's like you're called upon, like, you know, I remember I was on the board of my synagogue for 6 years, and someone, you know, one of the first one was like, well, why did you know, everyone, like the new members, like, well, why did you join the board? And, you know, so I still remember very clearly, it's like, well, why did I join? Because I was asked to join. You know, I felt like, you know, this was an opportunity to kind of be more involved and to be more helpful, but I felt that, you know, this was part of my community and I was asked to serve in this way, then I was going to say yes. So that's a way that, you know, I tried to do that. Let's see. I have someone volunteer to read this, and this is, I think, right in line with what Joanne was sharing with us.
No, I'll read if you like.
Thank you.
In the Midrash Sifrei, it says, Rabbi Nathan says, they spoke against Moshe even in his presence, as it is said, and the Holy One heard it. Now the man Moshe was very humble, and he restrained himself about the matter. According to the Midrash, therefore, scripture mentions Moshe's humility in that he endured their insult and did not answer them back, and that God was therefore zealous for his sake.
Right. So we give Joanne a lot of kudos for anticipating the midrash here. But you know, we all have different, you know, views about the divinity, and I don't know if, like, my view of that thinks about, you know, well, when I do something good or when I act humbly, you know, God is going to be zealous on my, you know, for my sake. But what, you know, I'm just curious, I don't have an answer to this, you know, what do other people think of that piece of the story? And is there a way that maybe we can relate to that in terms of, you know, other complementary forces in the universe, perhaps, that, you know, can back us up?
Yeah, well, I forgot what they call it in the Indian tradition. You know, but there's payback for people's actions.
Oh, karma?
Karma, yeah, it's like karma.
Right, so maybe we believe in karma, that, you know, things sort of even out. That's certainly one possibility.
Well, when somebody is criticized, you know, the tendency is to get defensive. But if you step back and you listen, that to me is humility. You say, maybe he has a point, maybe she has a point.
Yeah, Wendy, thank you, Carol.
Well, since Moshe had a relationship with God, and God's presence was discussed in this. I'm thinking, Moshe's not standing there alone being criticized and challenged, but he's standing there with God being criticized and challenged. And so instead of taking it in personally and then answering the person, I kind of, he's sort of shy, so I kind of see him as kind of like turning to God. No, not in truth, but I mean, because his presence, he felt the presence, kind of turning to God first. That was that one moment that he took the breath, like we do, say Shema, turning to God for the answer, or just because that's what I see anyway. I just see that he was strengthened by God, not to jump and say, oh yeah, this is my, no, it's God. So kind of lets God be God.
Making it about something bigger than himself, about taking comfort from the bigger picture. Yeah, thank you. Harry, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I think about Moses as the reluctant leader, if you recall. And if you're a reluctant leader, you're taking in negative stuff. You're wondering, well, maybe they have something there, and maybe I really should think about it and let me understand this a little better. So I think that's one way to look at this. That he's not coming from authority. He's not an authoritative leader. He's a reluctant leader. And so when he hears people complaining, he might be saying, wow, what did I do wrong? I really should figure this out. And therefore not be reactionary. He's not going to react to it. And therefore he's going to think about it. And I guess God, feels for him because he's trying to get his leadership legs in a way.
Yeah, God's the one that put him in this situation. It's like, nope, you're up, soldier. It's your turn. You're going out there. Yeah, so thank you, Gary.
Yeah.
Another thing that I thought of, and this is a Kabbalistic teaching, is that God can kind of exist in the relationship between people. And by Moses not sort of getting reactive, it didn't further damage the relationship. It allowed an opportunity for repair to happen, for that sort of relationship to remain intact. All right, well, let's push ahead a little bit. Okay, so this is this idea of, Hineni. And may we have a volunteer to read this first paragraph, perhaps someone we haven't heard from yet today. Any of you would like to unmute and read?
I'll read.
Thank you.
A different perspective at Anava involves our ability to show up as needed in any particular situation. When God calls to Abraham at the beginning of the binding of Isaac story, or when the angel calls to Moses from the burning bush, both men respond, Hineni, here I am. An ancient commentary to the Torah says that this term, Hineni, implies Anava and readiness to take action.
Thank you, David. Okay, so what is, and these, I'm sorry, I edited the slide and I lost the part which said this was from Rabbi David Jaffe. So what is Rabbi Jaffe, what is the point he's making here in this first paragraph?
Well, I think when you're standing up and doing it, you're taking up the space that needs to be taken up. And you're there to fill that space. So I could see where that could be considered humility in that respect.
Yeah, wonderful. Absolutely. It's okay. Jobs needs to be done. Okay, I'm here. I'm going to step into this role, even if I'm a reluctant leader, to use Harry's framing. I'm gonna step in. Hineni has just a real deep resonance to it. It's got this sort of like, I imagine like, the Olympic sprinter in the finals of the 100-yard dash, and they're all like sort of crouched down and their fingers are on the ground and their legs are in their perfect position and they're waiting for that, that gun to go off. It's like, Hineni, I am 100%, 200% focused on this moment so that I can respond, with my utmost. Great. Well, maybe have a reader for this, the second paragraph.
What is humble about saying, Hineni, here I am? Here I am implies being fully present. When I am fully present, I set aside what I might have thought was important for something else that is calling me from a deeper place. Abraham and Moses heard God calling. What is the equivalent for us? As dedicated as I am to spiritual life, I've never heard a non-embodied voice call to me. I think the equivalent for me is deep intuition. For many of us, it is hard to tell the difference between intuition and general noise that goes on in our heads. But when we can make out our true inner voice, are we ready to put our other priorities aside and say, Hineni, here I am? To do so takes conviction and deep trust in ourselves and our spiritual life. This inner confidence is also anava.
Thank you, Janet. Okay, so what is Rabbi, and this is to the whole group, what is Rabbi Jaffe what are some of the points he's making? And this, this is a very rich paragraph. So there's, a couple of different things that you might have taken from it. What resonates with you? And I can't see all of you, so if your hand is up, just unmute yourself. And
So I was thinking about what Wendy had said earlier about how she kind of virtually sat back when she heard this family member say something that was so offensive to her, and really didn't react in the moment, and then instead looked for that. But maybe she didn't call it deeper voice, but it seemed like that's what she was looking for. Deeper sense of what was required in the moment. And I know for me, when I am able to do that as well, then that's what I think of. Sometimes for me as well, I think of that God or my higher power speaks to me through events or people around me, not necessarily coming from inside me. Sometimes the noise is too big, too great. So sometimes it does come from outside, and then it reminds me that the spiritual life is not just inside; it's all around.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much for sharing that. Can anyone think of a time? Yeah, Carol.
Well, I have a kind of a question. I don't know if this really applies, but we had a discussion earlier in my spirituality group about stepping up. We were specifically talking about the police violence, the police, abuse of force. And I brought up the policewoman who stepped in and actually pulled another police officer off a man that had his knee on his neck. And this police officer turned around and punched her. And she lost her job over it, by the way. 15 years later, now it's gone back to court and she's gotten compensation. But meanwhile, she's gone through 15 years of hell. And I was thinking, she put aside her ego, she put aside her own personal safety. Is that a form of, it's certainly a form of hineni, of showing up. Is that a form of humility as well?
I don't know. What do people think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. It's really stepping up in an appropriate way. I mean, you think about the stories you're talking about with Moses speaking up against Pharaoh and what Pharaoh is doing. How is it really any different than that.
Mm.
Well, and he killed the Egyptian, Moses. But this woman was doing the right thing, even though she paid for it physically right away, and then probably emotionally, and in many other ways, financially. So it was perhaps very courageous of her, what she did.
Yeah, thank you. Carrie.
If she hadn't stepped up, then that would be, I think, an example of not having humility,
Mm.
that she wasn't taking her appropriate space. But because she did step up, she honored her morals and her values and her code of ethics as a police officer. And I think that she was perfectly I think it's a very good example of humility, and the absence of that behavior, of not acting, would have been the opposite.
Mm.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
Janos.
I'm just thinking, as we had a discussion months ago about Black people, and then I don't know, one of us said that, well, would you be willing to be a Black person today in the United States? So same way, I'm thinking, to understand fully the weight of the idea of humility, would any of us agree to be a police officer today?
Mm.
Because you are put into and just observing something and commenting and feeling about it, or being in those shoes. I think it's two different things. It's very difficult to understand where the humbleness, how that would.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the duty come in, and your personal thing, and the stress level, and the anxiety and fear and all of that come together in an interesting way. That is, I think it's very complicated here to understand this fully.
Yeah, so I think that's a really interesting point, and I would say sort of putting yourself in someone else's shoes is a great way to kind of develop compassion and understanding for where they are. And we can, to kind of maybe come away, aside from this question of the police officers, to bring it back to our own shoes that we're filling. Has anyone ever had one of those Hineni moments where you were sort of called upon and you either stepped up or maybe you didn't step up, and you look back at it later and you're like, wow, I really wish I had said something or done something. And for our own journeys, that's where the rubber hits the road. We can talk till the end of the day about how other people did or didn't, and that's an important piece of it, to kind of learn from examples and models. But now, as we internalize and think about how we're showing up in the world and our opportunities,
Uh-oh, looks like you froze.
I did freeze, but it wasn't a technical issue. It was just I was sort of thinking and percolating.
Oh, sorry.
It was the old-fashioned kind of freezing. Wendy,
You do it well.
Yeah, I think that it's hard to be a mom and not have those humane moments, but two comes to mind. Yes, I know they were, because I taught children for many years to dance, Israeli folk dance, many different synagogues and schools. And I wasn't really a fan of ever teaching adults. And Rabbi Einstein, and if you know Rabbi Stephen Einstein, you don't say no to him. And he wanted me to actually come and teach the board Israeli folk dance. But this wasn't for any adults, right? I'm like in my head, and in my everything is saying, no, Rabbi Einstein, I will not. But what came out of my mouth was, sure, of course I will. And I'm like, why did I? So I'm thinking sometimes it's out of your hands. Because I taught them and I had a great time. And the other time was fairly recently. I was in a Pilates class, and I just love my teacher. And he's gentle and sweet and just fun-loving. And and funny. But it was Yom Kippur, actually, not this Yom Kippur, obviously, the last Yom Kippur before. He said something like, I'm going to smoke you today. And I don't know why, I just thought, I can't believe he's saying that. It was not Yom Kippur, it was during, the preparation after. It wasn't on Yom Kippur, although whatever it is, it's okay. But he said that, and you can't say that on Yom Kippur. And I don't really, I know you guys probably don't think I'm shy and that I'm an introvert, but I really actually am. And I never talk at Pilates class. I go in, do my thing and go. But I felt like I had to stay after class and say something on behalf of all of us and Holocaust survivors and also the people who died in the Holocaust and also IDF. And it's interesting that it was just, the Memorial Day. Just everyone who's given their lives for our freedom, for Jewish freedom. And so I did say something to him afterwards, and I said, "Oh, I don't know if you really want to say that." And he was so receptive, and he goes, "Oh, you're so right," and "Oh, I'm so sorry." And it was, and I said, "I can go now." So I went out from my car. I'm coming home, and this lady next to me is honking at me. And I'm just in the lane. And I'm like, what does she want? And then she rolls her window down and says, roll your window down. Roll my window down. She said, oh, you did the right thing. I said, what? And well, that's so nice to have that affirmation, because it was not easy. I don't know if Hineni is.
No, it's not. These are not easy. Like if it's easy, it's not. I can almost say by definition, it's not a Hineni moment. It's like, it's not a Bahira point. It's not a choice point. I want to keep us moving because I want us to have at least a little bit of time for our breakout groups. And this actually came from this morning, as I often do, I go to the Institute of Jewish Spirituality Daily Sit. And today it was led by Rabbi Susan Leiter. And this is from her handout, where she was quoting from The Path of the Just, Mesilat Yesharim, incredible Musar book. And what he wrote in this chapter on humility was, let a person recognize that the frailty of the human mind and its many errors and illusions, which render it more likely to be wrong than to be right. The illusions which render it more likely to be wrong and right. And Rabbi Leiter, she sort of related to this in the way of, what she called daisy chaining, where it's like something happens, and I have this thought, and I have this other thought, and then it makes me create this picture of what's going to happen, which, often is not very accurate. So with your partner, what I think we have an opportunity, in addition to, you can, of course, do any kind of check in your life, but maybe talk about where imagination has led you. Do you agree that imagination can lead us to be wrong more than right? Or, and do, maybe share an example from your life when that's come up. So I'm going to create the breakout rooms. Okay, so the rooms are open. So just click the Join Breakout Room button on the screen. And you should be put into a room. Carrie, do you see the button? I've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. Okay, And for those of you who are watching and streaming, you're probably wondering, hi everyone, welcome back. What did you come up with? Does our imagination lead us to make errors more often or not? More often than we're right? What do we think? What did your groups talk about?
I was talking about not so much imagination, but having these perseverative thoughts about something that is not going to change and not going to do anything about, and obsessing on it. And it's like, why am I doing this? I need to let it go. But sometimes I don't. And it's really hard.
Yeah, it can be hard when we get caught by thoughts. Thank you, Joanne. Carol.
I'm a worrier, so I can go down all kinds of rabbit holes if I let myself. I can think about all the terrible things that are going to happen to me. But, I fight against that all the time because I'm very anxious by nature. But Harry said, so I thought something, I hope it's okay to share this, Harry. Yeah, Harry said something I thought was really good. He said, know which decisions are reversible and which ones are not. And I thought, I had never thought of it quite that way. Some decisions, it doesn't matter that much. If you choose chocolate this time, you can choose vanilla next time, right? But some aren't reversible. Once you make that choice, that's it. You can't change it, or you have to go back and fix it in a different way if you blew it. So. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Carol. Randy, I haven't heard from you today. What is your take on all these things we've been discussing, either with your partner or in class?
Well, I was thinking in the group I was with, Carrie, imagination can be a very broad and good thing. Illusion, I think, or bias, or just a narrow self-focus, I think. But yeah, if I think on humility, if I think of like with Moses, knowing the right place for yourself and knowing what the greatest good the universe or God has in mind in that situation. It's because even though you say, Hineni, here I am, you're also saying, yes, I've thought about it, and yes, I know where you are. Moses had to talk to Pharaoh, and he sort of knew where he was, and he had to have a lot of patience. Oh boy.
Yeah, absolutely.
For a long time, that things didn't happen on his own timetable with Pharaoh or with the people he had to lead either. He sort of had a hard time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, thank you. Thank you, Randy. And you were also making me think, that imagination can lead us down the wrong path, but sometimes it opens up whole new worlds. Whenever we're trying to make the world a better place, it's because, I'm imagining a world where we're not slaves anymore, where we're going to be a free people, we're going to have more justice in our country, whatever that means to you. So whenever when we are stepping into these Hineni moments, it is our imagination which maybe is supporting us, or trying to make a reality something which we're only imagining, or trying to prevent some tragedy which we're seeing unfold. Any other final thoughts or reflections that you'd like to share? How was today's conversation? And how are we doing? If anyone would like to kind of discuss that for a couple minutes before our meditation, Carol, what do you think?
Oh, I totally enjoyed today. I enjoyed the quotes and the discussion. And I feel like I got, well, like I say, I think I got a little bit of wisdom from Harry. It's nice.
Great, thank you. All righty, well, let us all close our eyes. And taking a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And say to yourself, Hineni, here I am. What does the world need from me in this moment? What does the world not need from me in this moment? We continue to observe what is our right space, what is our right place. May we mindfully go through our week in wisdom, mindful presence of seeing our choice points and of occupying that right space. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, friends, thank you so much for spending this last hour with me and with each other in community. I hope that this time of fellowship and community has been as uplifting for you as it was for me. And I look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
All right, bye now.